state for their children and their grandchildren, and take that to Canberra and concentrate on that, just like the Constitution originally envisaged.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, during my time in Tasmania, the impression is that, and I've come from the UK. I've lived in Melbourne for a long, long time, and I'm here now. Tasmanians are unjustly treated by government with a bottom of the barrel approach, it seems to me. And in short, we're not being treated with dignity.
We're not being treated with respect. We need to be respected. We're a proud island state. We're proud of our ability to achieve the things that we need to achieve, our resolution, our individuality, and we deserve respect. We do not deserve to be dropped off the bottom of the electoral map just because we're the most southern electorate in Australia.
Sure.
We do not deserve to be treated by Labor and Liberal as though we are somehow back in our colonial days and treated as an underclass.
Correct.
And that's what's happening in here. We see this happening with the way that so much of our natural resources are being sold off to the mates, to the donors, to the lobbyists, when this is our commons. Our waterways are precious to us. Tasmanians love getting out into nature. We don't want to see any of that being destroyed by political decisions that are made remotely from Canberra.
Surely. And, this feeling that's endured within me has come from a matter of perspective. Because if you're here for a long time, it kind of washes over you after a while and you become rather numb to it all. So the things closest to your heart, reading sort of your website, which is petergeorgeforfranklin.com, are the cost of living, housing, and what you call the environmental mess. So how do you think you can, attack these issues, which are so important to, I'd say, everybody in the Franklin electorate, in an open and responsive way, to the benefit of all, returning, I suppose, basic human rights to Tasmanians?
There are no quick, simple answers, unfortunately.
Surely.
We've had decades of two-party rule where so little has been done that could have avoided the positions that we're in today. The housing crisis has evolved over the last 40 or 50 years since the Commonwealth and the states used to build Commonwealth housing.
Yes.
There was a time when housing was an important central issue, making sure that Australians were properly housed. That has lapsed.
Yeah.
There are ways of dealing with it in the short term. One of which is for down in our area is reducing the number of houses that have been rented for short-term rentals with the Airbnb type properties, so that long-term rentals become more available.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's costing the Commonwealth more than $2 billion a year for negative gearing of second and third properties. That has to be phased out.
Surely.
With no question about that at all. Thirdly, we need to change the Australian Building Code to make it actually easier. At the moment, the Building Code applies from all the way from Darwin right down to Dover. It's not suitable for Tasmania. We need to make a state building code which allows us to build better, more sustainable properties for people. The third thing, and for me the most important things, are long-term. Ken Henry, one of Australia's most great thinkers and very highly, Ken Henry, a former head of Treasury and a very highly respected public servant, now works in various areas of climate. He has laid out a pathway forward which is perfect for Tasmania. You stop native forest logging, you improve the plantation logging, and then what you do is you value add there are all sorts of new systems and ways of being able to make prefabricated houses out of timber.
Surely.
They're safe, they're sustainable, they're able to be made quickly.
Yes.
And we need a national program of housing which is legislated so that the two parties can't fight over it. Once it's there, it's in legislation.
Surely.
And we can start addressing the problem. That's longer term, unfortunately, but that's because the parties have allowed us to get into such a terrible state of affairs. When it comes to cost of living, all right, you can say that the cost of living crisis is having worldwide
Surely,
impact,
surely.
and it is. But there are things we can do about it in Tasmania. First of all, we've got to reduce the cost of freight across the Bass Strait.
Yeah.
That's an obvious one. Why is it more expensive to move freight across the Bass Strait than it is to drive it from the East States across to Western Australia?
Yeah.
Second thing is we need more competition. We should be encouraging the Aldis and the Lidls and the and other supermarket chains
Yes.
to come in and provide competition. Thirdly, there was a whole Senate inquiry into price gouging. There are 4 or 5 great recommendations which could be put into place straight away.
Yes.
So that the two supermarkets, the duopoly of supermarkets, can't price gouge us any longer. So there are many ways we could do it. Unfortunately, again, both parties have been absent in this, in this issue.
In a debate, yes.
And when it comes to environmental mess, what can I say?
Yes.
Again, the two parties are driving us into a state of where our environment is going to be sold off.
Yeah.
Most importantly for me is Franklin the electorate, which involves the eastern shore of Hobart, Kingborough and the Huon Valley, is the most vulnerable area in Australia to the sort of devastating fires that Los Angeles saw recently.
No way, really?
Yeah. And the academics who look at this are saying the odds on a fire of that catastrophic level within the next 10 years grow every single year.
I'm sure.
And we could lose 40% of our housing, which is a lot more than Los Angeles did.
Wow.
We are truly, truly at a turning point. Now, Franklin needs to deal with the climate crisis the same as Australia does and the same as the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Australia could be and should be leading the way on this because we can see what is happening. We can see what's happening in Tasmania. Our waters are growing at 4 times faster than anywhere else
Yes,
on Earth
that's
on
right.
average. We've already got, we've already had sort of devastating bushfires in the last 4 or 5 years that show what can happen. It can only get worse. Tasmanians deserve to have politicians who are, one, prepared to take action that will help prevent these sort of catastrophes, and two, take action on climate change and show that Tasmania can be a clean, green state with 100% renewable energy, 200% renewable energy. Tasmania has a future that shines as an example to the rest of the world. I've always thought that Tasmania as a state has more potential than any other state does. We do have the potential for enormous amounts of renewable energy here. We've already got 100% renewable. We should not be selling it to the mainland. We should be keeping it here. And the reason we should be keeping it here is that the more renewable energy we have, the more clean, the more green, the more modern businesses are going to come and look at Tasmania
They'll be attracted.
and say, here's a place to come.
That's right.
Because carbon credits, carbon neutral, and the rest of it. So we need to improve the education system outcomes. We need better education outcomes so that the companies that come here, because we are clean and green and we're a standout in the world, can employ Tasmanians with sufficiently good education for the 21st century. So all these things are tied together. Housing, education, environment, sustainability,
Yes.
and health.
Yeah, and the links in the transitional chain are there. If they're not here immediately, they're available in other
obvious.
places in the world.
They're
believe
obvious.
it or not.
They're
so
obvious.
Scandinavia's leads in all sorts of issues there. So interesting.
I'm a big supporter of the Scandinavian model of private government style housing, where especially in a city, and we've got to think about this in Hobart, we don't want the urban sprawl to grow much bigger on the eastern shore. We need to look at that Scandinavian model where you have inner city, denser dwellings, but that take care of everybody from the unhoused through to the wealthy.
Yep.
In other words, you build community.
Yes.
And the Scandinavian
With
model is there.
Yes.
You have commerce, you have schooling, you have recreational areas, you have open green areas, and you have accommodation for all types of people. In other words, you're building a community.
I bet you even have hospitals in Scandinavia.
Yeah, that's right.
Something sadly missing from Kingston, for example.
Health. The two bottom lines for Tasmania are better education outcomes and better health outcomes. That is what makes a healthy community.
Sure.
We've talked a bit about education. When it comes to health, there are 5 urgent care clinics in Tasmania, and none of them are in Franklin. We need 24-hour urgent care clinics on Hobart's eastern shore, in Kingston, and in the Huon Valley. That's the bottom line. And one of the reasons for that is not only do you then have urgent care all the way around the clock, but then you take the weight off the Royal Hobart Hospital, which is where everybody has to go if they cause themselves an injury, particularly when it's out of hours and the urgent care clinics are closed. So health outcomes for a start in the Franklin area, southeast Tasmania, is urgent care clinics.
Yes.
Secondly, we need to improve the ability of Tasmanians in our part, in Franklin, to actually afford to go to the doctor.
Yes.
Which means increased Medicare, so that people can bulk bill more.
Sure.
It does mean we have to attract more doctors, and we have to attract more nurses. These are systemic problems that have been growing for year after year after year, and no one has been doing anything about it. So you've got to make public health availability to everybody. There's a human right for you. The other thing we need to do, because it's core to your health, is we've got to get bulk billing for for dental care.
Yes.
People cannot afford. Many people who are struggling to pay the rent, to pay the mortgage, to put food on the table, can't afford to do their teeth. And teeth is the essence of good health.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dental is getting pushed away. Well, look, Peter, thank you for your time. It's been illuminating to better understand what's close to your heart. And as the campaign unfolds, no doubt we'll catch up again and talk about other issues. If you have any issues, anyone who would like Peter to address, please hit him up on petergeorgeforfranklin.com, and we'll take your questions. Thank you very much.